one of the 13 principles of faith is we believe in messianic times and a utopian time. We believe the world is getting better and better, and one day we will enter that age, that messianic age. Do you see this event, which is unprecedented in ways? It's global, it's huge, leadership is lost, at a loss as to what to do. Do you see this as an important moment in the transition towards a utopia, if I may say, a more utopian age?
Isn't everything? Doesn't everything lead to the conclusion? So certainly something as dramatic as this, it's definitely moving us forward in the progress and the coming of Mashiach. But let's try this. What kind of a world is it going to be after Mashiach comes? What are we supposed to expect or imagine? So here's one very practical way, realistic way of looking at it. In the world today, without Mashiach, in other words, the imperfect world, there's this strange and objectionable condition where the fact and the truth are not the same. They're both real, but they're different realities. So, for example, Jews don't eat pork. True?
Yes.
Is that a fact? See, the fact is that there are some Jews who eat pork. So the fact does not match the truth.
Are you going to be a long time?
Most people, human beings, are basically good. True? Yeah, it's true, but it is not the fact. Fact is people are terrible. We are meant to be healthy and to live meaningful lives. True? Yes. Fact? No. This is the most disturbing part of Golus. We know what's true, and yet we look at the fact, and it doesn't match. The Holy Land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. True? Yes. Fact? Nobody agrees. It's such a strange world. When the fact does match the truth, we call it a miracle. Like the splitting of the sea, which we're going to celebrate in a few days. What happened at the splitting of the sea? The Egyptians are chasing the Jews. They've got an ocean in front of them. They've got these huge cliffs on both sides, to the right and to the left. They're stuck. They're locked in. And they're crying to God, what should we do? And God says, aren't you on your way to Mount Sinai? Yes. Well, then go. You got to get to Mount Sinai. And the people said, but there's an ocean in the way. And God said, you do what you need to do. You got to get to Mount Sinai. So they went towards Mount Sinai, and the sea got out of the way. So what actually happened? The fact of the sea surrendered to the truth of Torah. Jews have to receive the Torah. The ocean is there. Why can't it be someplace else? So this is the difference between fact and truth. Fact is reality as it happens to be. Truth is the reality as it must be. So there's only one way to resolve this. The fact that is not necessary has to surrender to the truth that is absolutely necessary. Coming of Mashiach simply means all fact will also be the truth, and every truth will become the fact. This division, this split, this friction between what ought to be and what is in fact, this has got to stop. So every human being, I believe, has standards, ideals that they truly believe in and plan to get around to it soon. My ideals, my picture of what I should be is much higher, much more noble than what I in fact am. So I'm not living up to my own moral standards. I'm not living up to my own ideals. The coming of Mashiach means, if it's true, why isn't it a fact? The facts will merge with the truth, and what is right and what is true, what is the purpose for our existence, will become the everyday fact of life. That would be a very, very good world. And it's so doable. It's so doable. It's not overly ambitious. It's not otherworldly. Our own truths. So what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Human beings are basically moral and good people. In truth. Well, they're going to become good and moral people in fact. Jews don't eat pork in principle, in truth. Well, the fact will become that no Jew will eat pork. Jews don't work on Shabbos. That's true. It also needs to be a fact. So that's what Mashiach is. Mashiach means a world that has healed this rift, this gaping wound that separates truth from fact and fact from truth. That makes sense.
There was a great baseball player in America called Yogi Berra, who coined many phrases which have become memorable. And one of them, I believe, is, in theory, there's no difference between theory and fact. But in fact, there is. What I want to ask...
Welcome to a Yankee fan here.
What I want to ask you is, you know, in the real world, in the factual world, the world in which most of us operate, there's a lot of discord. There's a lot of, we say, machlokes, division, divisiveness. There's a lot of hate. There's a lot of negative energy that Jews, unfortunately, for a long, long time, have felt towards, unfortunately, towards each other. There hasn't been that unity which was achieved in certain moments in history. In fact, Rashi, in that famous verse, when the Jewish people come to Mount Sinai, says this was a unique moment in history where the Jews actually were united like one man with one heart. So my question to you is, how do we get over that? Because certainly this must be precede the times of the Mashiach. We have to deserve the coming of the Mashiach. As the Rebbe said, not only sit passively, but to be proactive in actually each and every one of us ushering in that age through change, through personal change, through personal transformative change. And certainly this coming together, this unity, is a central part of that. My question to you is, how do you see an event like this, which has certainly shaken up the world? It has shocked the world to its core on a macro level and on a micro level too. How do you see this helping the Jewish people coming together?
Hasidus teaches that in order to reconcile differences, in order to bring about unity, where there are such great differences, valid differences between people and groups of people, the only way to really bring them together is to introduce a third, higher interest, that unites them. The example of the lieutenant and the captain, who are different ranks, different opinions, different egos, and of course they will have different opinions. But when the king walks into the room, the lieutenant is no longer a lieutenant and the captain is no longer a captain. They are both equally subjects of the king, and that unites them. It dissolves their difference, because in the presence of a greater force or a greater want, the petty wants of each individual dissolves. So the way that we get together is not by losing our opinion or losing our individuality. We will remain individuals and we will remain opinionated, and both opinions could be right, both opinions could be good. But when you introduce God's opinion, God's want, then we cooperate totally, and our differences don't get in the way at all, because there's something so much more powerful that neutralizes our differences and brings us together in a common cause. If we wake up in the morning, and this is, I think, the ultimate prediction of life in the future. If we wake up in the morning and we realize a simple reality, a simple truth, I don't need to be alive. I don't need this. I never asked for it. Life is not necessary for me. If I was never born, I was never created, I would not complain. You never hear a complaint of somebody who wasn't created. They never come knocking on your door and complaining, how come I wasn't born or created? We don't need it. The Gemara told us this thousands of years ago. You don't need to be born. If I don't need to be born, then I certainly don't need to get a job. If I don't need to get a job, I certainly don't have to pay bills. So all the assumptions that we've had, that we are very needy because we must live, and in order to live, we must do all sorts of things, that assumption is starting to fade. Farmers get up early in the morning of all of history to milk the cow, plow the fields. Why? Well, you have to. Why do I have to? Well, how else are you going to live? Today, people are thinking, and why do I have to live? This is not depressed people or suicidal people. This is just people who are thinking. The threat of dying is no longer enough to make life meaningful. We can't live your life so that you don't die. It's circular reasoning. So what's happening, and hopefully this is going to increase the speed with which it's happening, we're waking up to the idea that I don't need this. I actually don't have any needs at all. Every kid is telling their parents, I don't have to clean up my room. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be born. That is so true. What took us so long to figure this out? I didn't ask to be born means I have no needs. I have to go to school. I don't have to go to school. I have to get a job. I don't have to get a job. I have to buy a house. No, I don't have to anything. I'm a creation. Isn't that amazing? Only the Creator has to. Only the Creator is essential. So anything that is imperative can only come from Him. I have no imperatives. because I am not imperative except to him, to the Creator. So imagine if everybody wakes up tomorrow morning with the recognition that I don't need anything. I don't need to be born. I don't need to be alive. Well, then why am I? Because instead of being needy, you are needed. This is the future. This is how it's all going to become good again. I will realize that instead of me being needy, it's the Creator that is needy. You don't create a universe unless you need something. How is it possible for the Creator to be needy? I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, but there's no question that that's true. God created the world because something has to happen. Not a whim. It's imperative. So Torah is imperative. Mitzvahs are imperative. God's purpose is imperative. The world must become what God created it to be. So that is the truth. That will prevail, and we will realize that we've been living under a false assumption. I need? No, I am needed. I am essential to him.
Which in a way is the most empowering thought, that you're actually needed in a world where there are 7 other billion people. I think it was Mark Twain who once said that the 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. It's not what we need, it's what we're needed for, which resonates very deeply with us, and it's when you really start to live. So we're coming close to the end of our session here. If the Rebbe was always into the practical application of all these theories, as to echo the words you use, to transform the theory into the fact, to make the truth become more real in the factual world. So what is the practical takeaway to an audience, a wide range, who are living in these in these challenging times? What's the practical takeaway as to what they can do, or the focus in their lives day to day, as to fulfilling their purpose, to doing what the world needs of them or God needs of them, and not to focus so much on their selfish instincts or narrow interests? What's the theme?
Well, the beauty of mitzvahs, every mitzvah, is something we could live without. We don't need for human purposes. It is purely a service of the Creator. So ask a guy to put on tefillin, and he says very honestly, thanks, I don't need that. I say, I know you don't need that. That's what makes it a mitzvah. If you needed it, that would be your need, and I would leave it to you to take care of. No, you don't need to put on tefillin, but God needs you to put on tefillin. No, you don't need to keep kosher. God needs you to keep kosher. In fact, you don't need to honor your parents, unless you want to be in the will. You don't need to honor your parents. God needs you to honor your parents. It's one of the 10 commandments. So every mitzvah you do is something beyond your own need. You are serving God. So if we want to improve the world and serve God at the same time, think of the mitzvah you're not yet doing. The mitzvah you think you're going to get around to soon. Now's the time to get around to it. So add a mitzvah to your daily activity. Put a coin in the pushka every day. Put on tefillin every day. Keep kosher. Make Shabbos more holy. light Shabbos candles, whatever mitzvah you can think of that you're not committed to, now is the time to make the commitment. And then study Torah. You have time. Go online. There are so many good classes, lectures, fascinating, interesting. Chabad.org. You can study any subject your heart desires. Set a time and make it real. For an hour every day, you're going to study Torah. You can do it as a family, you can do it as an individual, you can do it as a couple. That will enhance your life immensely. And no, you don't need it, but that is what is needed of you. So it's a pleasure to do because it's not your need. And to be needed is really the ultimate blessing. We need to be needed far more than we need to be loved. That's simply a human fact. We need to be needed. We need to know that we are indispensable. And we can be indispensable only to the Creator. So let's refresh our relationship with Him, take on another mitzvah, study a little more Torah. It's magnificent.